Hello, welcome back. I'm Andreas, your tech-curious web designer. In the last video, we set up a basic chat application as a first step. In this video, we will implement Django Channels and upgrade the site to a Websocket connection to allow simultaneous communication between many users. So if you haven't set up the basic application yet, please watch the previous video first. And if you consider supporting me on Patreon or join my YouTube membership, you will have access to my cheat sheet for all the tutorials. Before we jump into the code, a quick shout out to my new supporter on Patreon. A high five to Lucas. Thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate it. And a big thanks to all of you guys who bought me coffees on buymeacoffee.com. Thank you so much. They really keep me going. Alright, with that said, let's jump right into it. We are ready now to upgrade our chat application to a WebSocket connection. And for this we will install the package Django Channels with the ASCII server Daphne. Let's have a look at the documentation. I'm searching for Django Channels. Here we have the documentation. And then we click on installation. Then here we have the command to install Daphne. Now we are using a virtual environment, so we just grab the pip install -u command here. The U stands for upgrade, so let's copy it and install it in our application. Pip install -u channels and in brackets Daphne. It is installing now Django Channels and the Daphne server. Once this is done, we add Daphne to our installed apps. In the core folder, to settings.py. Here we have to install Daphne as the very first app here. So on top of the list, we add Daphne. Then save this file. Then we change to our ASCII application. Now here we have the configuration for our Whiskey application. We comment this one out. And we change it to our ASCII application. So this is connecting to our ASCII.py file now. Alright, save this file. With this change we have switched now to the ASCII server. Let's check it out. We start up the server. And as we can see here, we are running on the ASCII Daphne server now. And we're able now to set up a WebSocket connection. For this, we're going to the ASCII.py file. So this line here initializes the application, which for now handles only incoming HTTP requests. Let's add now a router which can handle WebSockets too. And I'm using here this protocol type router function. Let's import it. So from channels.routing, import protocol type router. So I change this variable to Django ASCII application, because we're using the application variable for the router now, and add the HTTP connection in here. Alright, like that. Now let's add the WebSocket protocol. And the WebSocket setup contains different components. First, we have the allowed host origin validator. This is a security feature that makes sure that connections are accepted only from hosts that we have listed in our allowed host setting. Then we have the auth middleware stack. This is a middleware using Django's authentication system and will give us access to the logged in user. And we have the URL router. This maps the URL to the correct function in the backend using a routing.py file. Alright, let's import those components now. So the URL router, it's imported from the channels.routing. Then we have from channels.security.websocket import allowed host original validator. And then we have from channels.auth import auth middleware stack. And now we have to import the routing file, which we are going to create in a second. And important here is to import this file after calling the ASCII application function. So just underneath here, we import the routing file from our chat application. So we have configured here now a HTTP connection and a WebSocket connection. Alright, save this file. We will see some errors here in the terminal, and that's because some files are still missing, for example the routing. Let's create this file now. So in my chat folder here, I create a new file, routing.py. Here I import the path from django.urls. And then from .consumers I import everything. So this consumers file is the equivalent to the views.py file, but for a WebSocket connection, and contains the business logic of the application. We will also create this file in a second. Then let's add here the WebSocket URL patterns. So we have here the path. Then we start the path here with WS for WebSocket. This is a common convention to distinguish between a HTTP connection. Then chatroom, which makes it easy to understand where the connection is pointing to. And then we have the chatroom name as a dynamic parameter. This is the group name we stored in our chat group table. Alright, and here I'm calling the chatroom consumer. This is a class, and we initialize it with the as_ASCII method. Okay, let's save this file, and let's create this chatroom consumer now. So I'm creating now a consumers.py file. And in here we import now the WebSocket consumer, which is coming from channels.generic.websocket. So this WebSocket consumer is handling our WebSocket connection. Alright, and now we create this chatroom consumer class, which inherits from the WebSocket consumer. And for now we just establish a WebSocket connection. We add here the connect method, which calls the self.accept function. Alright, save this file. Now let's restart the server to see if we have cleared the errors. So I shut down the server and run the server again. Alright, all looks good now. So next, to call this WebSocket connection, we need a trigger on the front end, and for this we're using Htmx. However, the WebSocket connection is not part of the core Htmx codebase. We need to add it as an extension. So let's find the official documentation, Htmx, and WebSockets. And here we have the WebSocket extension from Htmx. And to install it, we have to grab this line here and add it to our base.html file. So we go to the templates folder, and we have here base.html. Then I'm going to the head, and just underneath Htmx here, I include the extension. I also get rid of the version number to load in always the latest version. Like that. Okay, and save this file. Now let's go to our chat.html file and include this extension. So here my chat folder, in the templates, I go to chat.html. Here we have our standard Htmx attributes. I will get rid of them now because I will use the extension to create the WebSocket connection. With this hx extension attribute, we are upgrading to a WebSocket connection. Then we connect to the path with the ws connect attribute. And the chat group I want to join is the public chat. When we add private chat rooms in a future video, this name will be dynamic. Okay, and to send data through a form, we also need another attribute. and this is ws-send. Alright, save this file. So now we created a WebSocket connection. Let's test it out. Let's go to our website, refresh the page. Everything looks good here. Now let's check the terminal. And as we can see here, we have a handshake here now, and the WebSocket is connected. So we have an open connection now between the browser and the server. Awesome. But for the moment, our form doesn't work, because we're not connected anymore to the chat view. So if you try to add another message, nothing will happen. So let's implement this logic now using the consumers.py file. Consumers.py. And as first, I would like to get the logged in user. So here we don't have access to the request object anymore. However, we can get information about the WebSocket connection from the scope dictionary, which is provided to us through the auth middleware stack. Then the chat room name we can get from the scope again, and this time we are accessing the URL route key, and more specifically the keyword argument for the chat room name, which is part of the URL path. And once we have the chat room name, we can get now the chat room object. So I'm using here the getObject04 function, access the chat group table, and retrieve this chat room by the group name. Let's import the missing components. So from Django.shortcuts import getObject04, and from .models import everything. Alright, next let's add the receive method, which can receive the data from the form. So this method receives the data in this text data parameter, but it is in JSON format. So first we have to convert it into a Python object. And we do that with json.loads. Let's import JSON now. Okay. From this text data JSON object, we can get our body element. Like that. Okay. Once we have the body, which is our message, we can store the message in a database. For this, I'm creating a group message object and add here the body, which is the body we just defined earlier. Then we have the author, which is the self.user. So we need to use the keyword self here so we can access the user variable inside the connect method. And we also have the group, which is self.chatroom. Alright, let's test to save a message now. So I save the file, back to the browser, and refresh. Then test 6. Nothing happened, but this was expected because we have not completely finished the receive logic yet. But if I refresh the page, I should see the new message. There we go, the message is here. It was saved successfully in the database. Alright, but you might have noticed the reset function on the input field stopped working. Let's fix that now. So let's go back to the chat.html file. So the after request event is only triggered with a HTTP request. So for WebSockets, we need to change this to WS after send. So this is triggered now after data was sent in a WebSocket connection. Alright, save this file. And now let's implement the logic to send the Htmx partial back to the frontend. So back to the consumer. So after the message was saved in a database, I'm calling the send function to send data back to the frontend in the form of our HTML partial. Let's create this now. So HTML. So similar to the return statement in a normal views function, we have here a render to string function with our Htmx partial here, which we created already, and the context. Let's first import the render to string. So from Django.template.loader import render to string. And now we define the context. And here we send through the message object and the user object. Okay, save this file. And to display this partial on the website, we need to use now the out of band attribute, because we got rid of the hx target and swap attributes. So let's go to our partial file. Then I wrap this code in a div. So the element I'm targeting is the chat underscore messages. And here I'm adding this hx swap OOB attribute to add the message in this container before end. Okay. And then I also add the closing tag. Alright, save this file. And let's test this now. I refresh the page. Test 7. And there we go. The message appears here now. Great. So we have now successfully established a WebSocket connection between the browser and the server. But so far, this is only a one-to-one connection, meaning that other users of the same chat group do not yet receive this message automatically. For this, we add a channel layer now. So first we need to add a configuration to our settings.py file. In the core folder, settings.py, and just underneath the ASCII configuration here, I'm adding the channels layer configuration. So I'm using here in development the in-memory channel layer as a communication system, which comes with the Django Channels package and is great for development. In production, however, we will change this to a Redis database for a more robust solution. We will see in a future video how we can set it up. Alright, let's save this file. Now back to consumers.py to implement the logic. Let's go to the connect method and add the channel to a group. So here I'm using the channel layer object and call the group add function. And in this function here now, I'm adding here the name of the group. So in our case, it is this chat room name here. And also the channel name. This channel name is automatically generated by the server and identifies a unique user. Now dealing with the channel layer is an asynchronous operation, but so far our code is only synchronous. So to make this work, one option is to make the whole method asynchronous. And this is done like this. We first inherit from my asynchronous WebSocket consumer, then add an async keyword in front of the method and an await keyword when we call the function. However, a much simpler option is to wrap our function in an async to sync function. Like this. And with this now, we are bridging the gap between synchronous and asynchronous code. Let's import this function now. So from ASCII ref.sync, import async to sync. Alright. So far we have connected a channel to a group. Next, let's also leave the group again when the channel disconnects. For this, we add a disconnect method. And in this disconnect method, we're calling again the async to sync function, but this time we're using group discard to remove the channel from the chat group. Okay, and the same we have to apply also to our receive method. So here we're calling the group send function. And the group send function is basically replacing now the self.send function, because we are broadcasting now to everyone in the group. And in order to send the Htmx partial, we create an event and an event handler. So first let's create this event handler. So here we define first this message handler method. I'm grabbing all the code from here and paste it in this event handler here. The method has to have access to the message object. So let's create now an event dictionary and we'll pass it through to this method as a parameter. So event. Now to connect to this message handler, we add here the keyword argument type and as value the name of the method. And then we're also sending through the message ID. Alright, so in this function here we have now access to the message ID with the event object, and from the message ID we can get the message object. Like that. Okay, this is definitely the most complicated part in this whole setup, but basically to be able to send a message to all participants in a chat group, it is essential to set up an event handler with a type field, which defines what method should handle the event. Alright, save this file, and let's do a test. I refresh the page. Test 8. The message still works here. Great. And now let's test with an additional user. I sign in here with Bobby. Okay, and sign in. And now I add another message. Test 9. And as we can see, also Bobby received this message automatically. Awesome. Alright, we successfully implemented now a WebSocket connection with Django Channels and using channel layers to broadcast messages to all the users in a chat group. This is all for this video. Thank you for watching. In the next video we will implement the online count to see how many people are online. I hope to see you there. Until next time my friends, happy coding and ciao ciao for now.